Major moves are coming for the Toronto Maple Leafs as a new report has revealed a big Toronto Maple Leafs free agency update specifically surrounding Max Pacioretty as well as a couple of other targets. So to break down that exact report and discuss what it can mean going forward as the regular season inches closer and closer. So stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we do, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's free, and about 70% of you who are watching are not subscribed. So make sure to do that. It would mean the world to Darius and myself. But Darius, let's just dive right into it today. We have a lot to discuss because a new report dropped from Chris Johnson today, and it's very interesting. It's surrounding Max Pacioretty, and obviously we knew reports came out a few days ago, and really for the past several weeks surrounding Max Pacioretty, but a new one came out literally about 30 minutes ago as of the time of recording. It says the Leafs have expressed interest in veteran free agent forward Max Pacioretty, but it will ultimately come down to whether he wants to be a Leaf, as other teams have also reached out, and if signed, it's expected to be a contract, a player contract, not a tryout, and we kind of knew that. But Chris Johnson came out and just said that if the Leafs can't land Pacioretty, they will consider other veteran options at left wing to come join them in training camp. And this is the big update here. And this has a bunch of different, I guess, meanings for the Leafs. But I want to get your thoughts on this. And we'll dive into some of the other reports as well and some of the other players that they could potentially target if they don't land Pacioretty. But it seems like another report now kind of correlates with the fact that the Leafs are actively pursuing Pacioretty if he wants to be a Leaf.
Yeah, there's a lot to break down there, right? We kind of knew that the Leafs had interest from, a report last week in Max Pacioretty, and, say what you want about that, whether you like it or not, they have interest in him. And it just sounds like at this point in time, it's, the ball is in his court if he wants to sign with the Maple Leafs or not. We know that, there's interest from, I believe, the Detroit Red Wings as well as the Anaheim Ducks, but he wants to be closer to home on the East Coast. So it might be Detroit that he's looking at, and he might be able to get more money out of Detroit just because of Toronto's cap situation. Not that Detroit's is much better. Everyone's really up against the cap, but maybe he's looking at a better opportunity long-term in Detroit. So that could be an option. There could be other teams looking at him too. But the one thing I thought that was really interesting from Chris Johnson is that they're looking at other veteran options at left wing. I thought that was very interesting because when I think of veteran, I don't think of Philip Zadina like we talked about last week. I'm looking at guys who are older, right? And when you look at the list of guys who are still free agents and still available, Nick Cousins just went off the board last week as well. You're looking at guys like Clutterbuck, who we talked about. There's a guy, Mike Hoffman, which I would not be a fan of, but again, he's on that list that kind of fits that bill, a veteran left winger. Can play right wing too, but anyway, I'm just thinking of left shots. And so I'm looking at the list, and it's a very short list at this point in time of veteran left wingers. Could be maybe even JVR that we talked about too, could make a return to the Toronto Maple Leafs, but I think some other teams are looking at PTOs for him. So I thought that was the most interesting part of the report today, or what CJ said this morning on the radio. And looks like the Leafs are looking at a bunch of different options, but they're not necessarily young. And I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that.
Yeah, kind of paints the picture about what their plan is for this upcoming season. You mentioned it. Zadina obviously signed, I believe, in Switzerland now, so he's off the board, who was an interesting guy. But there's a lot of different players the Leafs have been linked to, and we haven't really gotten a concrete report about what style of player they're going for, because we've been talking about guys that are younger, we've been talking about guys that are older, like Cal Clutterbuck, and now to see from Chris Johnson that they're going for veteran guys, it's very interesting, but it also kind of makes sense. And I think that based on that report, if you're looking at veterans, Pacioretty's probably, whether you like him or not, one of the better ones available, at least from the left wing slash veteran perspective there. But there's another interesting part of this, which we'll get into in a minute. You have some people on the side of the fence that he's a waste of time. We had our stream last week discussing this. I'm sure it'll be a topic in our stream tomorrow. 35 years old, coming off terrible injuries, 4 goals, 47 games last year. Why is he playing above a Nick Robertson who had 14 in 56 games? And the Nick Robertson thing comes into play here. So if they're looking at veteran wings, could that mean that they're looking to keep Nick Robertson, or could it mean that they're looking to trade him going forward and that they want to replace Nick Robertson with a more veteran type player who has a more, I guess, defined role or consistent role in the team, given the lack of a role that Nick Robertson ultimately had last year? Because Nick Robertson is the big question mark now for the Toronto Maple Leafs, still is. And do you think that this gives any insight into what their potential future could be with him? I think ultimately it'll depend on what they could get in a package for him. I still think he's going to get traded, and I don't think that I think that ultimately whether they sign a veteran or not is not going to have a direct impact. But it's interesting to discuss, especially because you can see some tweets here. People are outraged with the Max Pacioretty stuff because they have Nick Robertson currently.
Yeah, I don't think we know specifically what the plan is at this point or what they're going to do based off of this information, at least, right? But I think one thing's for sure, at least this is the way I'm reading it, that the fact that they're going out and looking at Max Pacioretty, and if if that falls through and he goes somewhere else, somebody else in terms of a veteran on the left wing, is because they know that they're probably not going to start the season with Nick Robertson one way or another, whether that's a trade or he's just sitting out and they want to keep him, which I think again is still the best course of action. But not him sitting out, obviously, them keeping him and signing him and having him play. But I think they're getting ready for life without Nick Robertson one way or another. And, the fact that it's a veteran, I think there's some other options there that they can take a look at. Maybe even let some Marlies fight out for that spot, right? Fight it out in training camp. Gribyankin, there's so many options we've been talking about. Again, not too many that have been there and done that. So maybe that's why they're looking at Pacioretty. And I don't think Pacioretty is a, waste of time, as that tweet put it. I don't think that they should sign him. I think that they should go a different direction. But in terms of waste of time, I wouldn't, be mad if they signed him, because he's still, when healthy, and if he stays healthy or relatively healthy, he can still put up points and help that bottom six, where I imagine he's going to slot in. And he's still an effective player in that way. It's just if he gets injured, then it is kind of a waste of time, right? Because now he's injured, he's on LTIR. They're going to have to find somebody to fill that spot anyway. So obviously he brings that veteran leadership as well. So he has playoff experience. He can bring in, help out the young guys and all that stuff. And so it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I wouldn't do it if I was them. I would go a different direction. But in terms of a waste of time, if they do sign him, I don't think it's a waste of time. I think he can help in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and again, it wouldn't be a PTO. The Leafs are looking at a lot of other PTOs, which we still haven't. The Leafs still haven't signed a guy in a PTO. We thought that was going to happen soon. And you look at Pacioretty's stats going forward, or I mean, last year he only put up 4 goals in 47 games, and he's on the tail end of his career. He's going to be 36 or close to 36 by the time the season starts. So he's definitely not getting younger. And you're looking at a guy like Nick Robertson. I think, yeah, the fact they're targeting guys like this and veterans probably means that Nick Robertson is on the way out. That being said, I think that if they decide to keep Robertson, even having Pacioretty again on the team, that would honestly make the team even deeper if you can keep Robertson and add a veteran guy.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be Pacioretty. Whoever is on the highest board that you have regarding veteran free agents available. But I think either way, it's very interesting. They're looking to make a move, and I think it just goes to show that they're trying to win over the next couple of years, because you're not signing guys like Max Pacioretty if you're in a retool rebuild, which obviously the Leafs aren't, but they're really going all in. We've seen that Chris Tanev contract 6 years. He's aging. OEL, he's also aging. So the contracts they made signify, hey, we're going to go for it over the next few years. And signing a guy like Max Pacioretty would be doing that, in the sense of it would help, hopefully. Even though we saw guys in the past, we mentioned this ring, Joe Thornton, some of the other veteran guys, Patrick, there's a bunch of guys that they signed in the past that didn't really work out. So it's will they go back? It is not Kyle Dubas anymore, who loved his veterans, but it seems like Brad Treliving kind of took over that veteran, I guess, philosophy that Dubas had, at least this offseason, depending what they do.
Yeah, and the last thing I will say, at least in terms of Max Pacioretty, is sometimes I look at a lot of Leafs moves personally with the regular season glasses on, right? And sometimes you have to, because how do you get to the playoffs, right? You have to make the playoffs. You have to put together a good regular season. And when looking at Max Pacioretty, he's probably not going to have an amazing season or anything like that based on past numbers and the last two Achilles injuries he had, right? Which they're significant injuries, especially for a hockey player. I think, would you rather have Nick Robertson or Max Pacioretty in your lineup in the playoffs when the games get tighter, right? And the checking is there and everything's tighter, right? I think I'd rather Max Pacioretty in some of those situations. Not saying, to trade away Nick Robertson or anything, but I think having a guy like Max Pacioretty could be a good thing in certain situations. We just don't know what that contract's going to look like in term. I would imagine it's a 1 year deal and pretty, low AAV, but we'll just have to wait and see over the next couple of days, because it's going to come pretty shortly here. Because if it's not a PTO, I imagine it gets done in the next couple of days. He'll probably make his decision. So it's going to be exciting to see what happens. I personally wouldn't do it if I was the Leafs. I would look at a different option. But if he does come to Toronto, I think there is some use there.
Yeah, let us know down in the comments. Do you want to see Max Pacioretty on the Leafs? A move is probably going to happen very soon as training camp inches closer and closer. So let us know. We'll keep you up to date with all that, and we'll see you soon.